The story begins in the depths of a dimly lit underground dungeon. Kuro walks through the slum-like rows of cages before stopping in front of a specific prisoner. He informs Ju that he has located a new trouble for him to handle, the assassination of the hero. Flashbacks reveal the details of the assignment. Kuro explains that the hero will be hosting a lavish party in 3 days, which will serve as the execution ground. Kuro plans to infiltrate the venue disguised as a servant to provide the signal when the time is right. He hands Ju a document containing the target's profile, a legend revered by both gods and the public for slaying demon kings and crushing armies. Despite this sterling reputation as humanity's beacon of hope, Kuro demands his death. When Ju asks for clarification on the method, Kuro slams his hand down in a sudden fit of rage. He insists that the hero must die before his eyes, revealing that the so-called savior disgraced his granddaughter, driving her to suicide. Ju notes that such emotional outbursts are unlike him, but Kuro, teary-eyed, retorts that a mere tool could never understand such pain. He coldly reminds Ju that as a weapon, the assassin does not need emotions or questions, only the ability to strike true. Returning to the present, Ju perches in a tree outside the castle, observing the banquet hall through the windows. Inside, the room is filled with high-ranking nobles. The hero is the center of attention, surrounded by women begging for a dance. Feigning modesty, the hero claims to have 2 left feet, but eventually obliges. Watching from the shadows, Ju acknowledges the target's flawless appearance and dazzling record, but remains focused on the mission, indifferent to the man's character. Spotting a specific waiter moving away, Ju recognizes the signal. Suddenly, the castle lights cut out, plunging the gala into chaos. Guests scream in confusion, demanding lights immediately. Seizing the opportunity, Ju leaps from the dome and slips through a window into the hallway. While the staff scrambles to investigate the cause of the blackout, the assassin navigates the corridors, narrowly avoiding a sharp-eyed waiter. Following the map, Ju arrives outside the hero's private quarters and pauses upon hearing voices. Inside, flustered servants apologize for the darkness, while entitled guests complain about their ruined gowns and hunger. The hero initially attempts to mediate, asking a guest to light the room with magic. However, once the room is illuminated, the atmosphere shifts terrifyingly. Bored by the wait, the hero draws a sword and drops his benevolent facade. With a sadistic smile, he suggests passing the time by chopping off their limbs to fashion them into living dolls. Inside the room, the terrifying reality of the hero's nature unfolds. The terrified servant recoils as the group discusses their grim plans. One companion mentions a ministerial ban on treating humans as toys, but the hero dismisses the concern, casually suggesting they can melt the body down to destroy the evidence. Deciding to start with the victim's right arm, the hero ignores the man's desperate screams. Outside, Ju listens to the agony, recalling Kuro's hatred. Any lingering doubts vanish. The legend is a filthy monster deserving of death. The hero grips the servant's arm, offering a twisted assurance that the pain will cease once he is transformed into a doll. The torture is interrupted when the door swings open, revealing the assassin. When the hero demands his identity, Ju calmly introduces himself and states his intent to kill. The hero bursts into laughter, mocking the elderly intruder and belittling the threat. Deciding the assassin looks more entertaining than the servant, the hero claims Ju as his new plaything. His female companions complain about the unfairness, while the trembling servant watches in horror, realizing the entire party is insane. Ju analyzes their behavior, wondering if constant battles against monsters or innate madness have stripped them of their fear of death. Acknowledging that a frontal assault breaks the code of an assassin, Ju decides to proceed anyway, driven by a desire to test his limits against a legend. The duel begins as the hero charges, demanding entertainment. Ju weaves through the attacks, noting that despite the hero's small stature, the pressure behind his blade is immense. A single direct hit would be fatal. However, the assassin observes a flaw. The hero's strikes are powerful but simplistic, designed for slaughtering mindless beasts rather than fighting a skilled martial artist. Frustrated by his opponent's evasion, the hero unleashes a signature technique, the Flash Dragon Fang. A blade of light twists like a dragon, appearing to sever Ju's hand. The hero gloats over the hit, only to freeze as he looks down to find a sword buried in his own stomach. To his shock, Ju's hand reappears, intact and unharmed. Confused and furious, the hero dismisses the injury as a fluke and attempts to heal himself with magic. Instead of recovering, he violently vomits blood and collapses to his knees. Ju reveals the trap. The knife was coated in a specialized poison that reacts to magical energy. Given the hero's immense power, the reaction is accelerated, leaving him with only moments to live. Panic erupts among the hero's companions. They attempt to form a battle formation, but Zhu strikes with lethal precision, instantly killing one with a knife to the neck. The muscular woman lunges at him, but Zhu incapacitates her with a devastating punch to the gut. Ignoring her desperate pleas for mercy, he finishes the job without hesitation. As the slaughter concludes, Kuro enters the room. The servant, still in shock, asks if they need to eliminate the assassin as well. Kuro shakes his head, assuring him that a professional of Zhu's caliber can be trusted to remain silent. The hero, refusing to accept defeat, scoffs at the assassin and labels him a coward. Zhu dismisses the insult, indifferent to concepts of honor. He simply fought to win. Glaring at Kuro, the fallen legend demands to know if he is the mastermind behind the ambush. Kuro confirms his involvement, offering a final, chilling lesson. The most dangerous creatures in this world are not monsters, but humans. Ignoring the warning, the hero arrogantly attempts to assert his status as a legend one last time, but Zhu swiftly severs his head, silencing him forever. With the deed done, Kuro finds solace, believing his granddaughter can finally rest in peace. He attempts to call out to Zhu as the assassin departs, perhaps to offer gratitude or further instruction, but ultimately decides against it, letting him walk away in silence. 13 days later, Zhu travels alone, preparing to go underground and flee the country. He inspects the forged identity documents provided by Kuro, which bear his new name, Jade. Although the papers will allow him to cross the border, he struggles with a deep internal conflict. Having known nothing but bloodshed since before his memory began, he questions whether a living weapon like himself can truly blend in with ordinary society or find a purpose that does not involve death. His existential spiral is interrupted when a weathered notebook falls from his bag. Picking it up, he is transported back to a memory from his childhood in the cage. He recalls a quiet moment with a young girl named Hachi. She once asked if he had ever eaten cake, recounting a mission where she killed a man who was buying a fluffy, flower-topped cake for his daughter. Overcome with guilt for ruining that family's moment, Hachi tearfully added, "Deliver a cake" to the bucket list in her notebook. She expressed a desperate desire to abandon their violent life, escape the cage, and live freely with Zhu. Returning to the present, Zhu realizes the notebook and the dreams within it belonged to her. Standing at the edge of a cliff, he makes a silent vow to his fallen friend. Acknowledging that he cannot fix the past, he promises to carry on her will and experience the outside world for her. He mentally declares the death of the assassin Zhu. From this moment on, he will live as the ordinary man Jade, dedicating his new life to fulfilling the list Hachi left behind. News of the hero's death spreads rapidly, plunging the Elgrand Empire into shock and mourning. Rumors fly wildly, with some blaming the Demon King's revenge and others suspecting political treachery. However, the truth, that he was slain by a lone assassin, remains buried, for that assassin no longer exists in this world. Far away at the border of the kingdom of Inkarol, the man formerly known as Zhu waits in line at the immigration gate. He clutches his new identification papers, fully embracing his new persona, Jade. He reflects on his past, realizing he never had a true family registry since Kuro took him in. The forged identity he now holds cost a fortune in the underworld, a place where money often carries more weight than a human life. The border guard eyes Jade's meager belongings and questions his light travel. Jade lies smoothly, claiming his home burned down and that he has nothing left. After a tense pause, the guard approves his entry, cheerfully welcoming him to the free kingdom. Jade exhales in relief, having nearly suffered a heart attack from the scrutiny. Walking into the town, Jade is amazed by the diversity of races and trades flourishing in the land of freedom. However, anxiety quickly sets in. He wonders if a man whose only skill is killing can truly find honest work or ever smile among ordinary people. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice cheering him on. He spins around expecting to see Hachi, but the street is empty. Realizing it was just an echo of his memory, he steels himself and whispers a promise to her to do his best. After spending 3 days traveling through forests and surviving on monster meat, Jade arrives at a bustling city checkpoint. The guard here is far less welcoming, recoiling from the traveler's stench. When Jade presents his ID and baggage, the guard mocks his filthy appearance, warning that no one will hire a man who reeks. Despite the insults, the paperwork checks out and Jade is allowed into the city with a stern warning to deal with his odor. As he walks the streets, Jade considers looking for guard work given his combat experience. But he quickly realizes that is impossible in his current state. Passers-by wrinkle their noses and whisper about the smell, prompting him to prioritize hygiene. He heads straight for an inn, booking a cheap room for 10 days. Inside the communal shower, Jade washes away the grime of the wilderness, enjoying his first proper bath in ages. His relaxation is interrupted by a fellow guest banging on the door, complaining that he is hogging the water. When Jade steps out, the towel clad around his waist, the complaining guest freezes, staring in shock and fear at the intricate web of scars covering Jade's body. Later, Jade lies on a real bed, marveling at the comfort compared to the rough sleeping conditions of his old hideout. The sensation of freedom, of not having a target to kill, brings him a profound sense of peace. However, a loud sneeze interrupts his thoughts. The cheap room is dusty. He realizes that to fulfill the items on Hachi's bucket list, he needs to find a job quickly and upgrade to better living quarters. The next morning, he steps out onto the main street, ready to navigate the overwhelming crowds and shops of his new life. Jade scans the marketplace, desperate to find a way to earn a living. His eyes instinctively drift toward a weapon stall, assessing the blades with a professional eye, but the steep prices remind him of his empty pockets. Shaking off the urge to arm himself, he catches the scent of fresh baking. Realizing he hasn't had a proper meal since leaving the Empire and is completely broke after paying for the inn, he approaches the source of the aroma. Stopping at a bakery, Jade asks the female clerk if they are hiring. However, his scarred face and intense aura terrify her. She misunderstands his request, trembling in fear as if he were threatening her. The situation escalates when she bursts into tears, prompting the manager to rush out from the back. Seeing Jade's intimidating appearance, the manager assumes he is a gangster trying to extort them, and aggressively throws him out before Jade can explain himself. Dejected, Jade wanders through the streets, facing rejection at every turn. He realizes the grim reality of his situation. At 38 years old, he has never held an honest job, and his face screams, criminal. His ragged clothes only add to the suspicion. He begins to accept that his only viable options might be working as a soldier or an adventurer, trades that rely on violence. His thoughts are interrupted by a man sprinting through the crowd, shoving a girl aside and shouting for people to move. Jade quickly helps the girl to her feet, checking if she is injured. Moments later, an elderly woman cries out, pointing at the fleeing man and screaming that he stole her bag. The girl notes that the thief is heading for the twisting alleys where he will likely disappear. Jade assures her he will handle it and vanishes before she can even offer to join the pursuit. While the town officers scramble on the ground, Jade takes to the rooftops, tracking the target from above. He realizes that the skills he honed for assassination are now being used to save someone, a thought that brings him a strange sense of purpose. In a secluded alley, the thief stops to catch his breath, laughing at how easy the heist was. He prepares to examine the loot, unaware that he is being hunted. Suddenly, Jade drops down behind him, locking him in a non-lethal chokehold. As the thief struggles, Jade reflects that restraining a target without snapping their neck or breaking bones is significantly harder than killing. However, he finds satisfaction in the mercy, mentally noting that this is a story he can proudly share with Hachi. Retrieving the stolen bag, Jade returns to the main street. He approaches the elderly victim, handing her the property and assuring her that the contents are intact. Expecting relief, he is instead met with a piercing scream. The woman, terrified by Jade's frightening appearance, points an accusing finger at him and yells to the crowd that he is the thief. Jade stands frozen in shock, realizing his good deed has completely backfired. Jade is stunned by the accusation, unable to comprehend how his good deed has been twisted into a crime. As the crowd murmurs in agreement, an officer orders him to freeze. Jade briefly considers bolting, but quickly dismisses the idea, knowing that fleeing would only confirm their suspicions. He sits down slowly, insisting on his innocence, and explaining that he chased the real thief to the red light district to retrieve the bag. The officer scoffs at the story, calling him a liar. He points out that the red light district is too far away for anyone to have caught a thief, and returned in under 10 minutes. Convinced Jade is merely an accomplice trying to slip away in the confusion, the officer forces his hands behind his back and handcuffs him. Jade realizes that his ragged appearance has already condemned him in their eyes. No amount of talking will fix this. Unwilling to rot in jail for a crime he didn't commit, he tenses his muscles, preparing to shatter the handcuffs and escape by force. Just as he is about to make his move, a voice cuts through the crowd. The young woman from the earlier collision pushes her way to the front, demanding they stop. Jade watches in amazement as she vouches for him. lying to the police that she was with him during the chase. She urges the officer to verify the unconscious thief's location before the real criminal wakes up and escapes. Swayed by her testimony, the officer agrees to investigate. Leading them to the alley, Jade points out the unconscious culprit. The evidence is undeniable. The officer and the elderly victim offer sheepish apologies, realizing they judge Jade solely on his looks. By the time the confusion clears, Jade looks around to thank his savior, but the young woman has already vanished. He silently thanks her, acknowledging that without her intervention, he would be a fugitive again. Refocusing on his survival, Jade returns to the main street, but his luck with employment remains abysmal. Shop after shop turns him away, wary of his scruffy, dangerous appearance. Desperate, he stops in front of a tool shop. He suspects that such a nondescript storefront might be a cover for underworld dealings, a world he tried to leave behind, but realizes he can no longer afford to be picky. Stepping inside, Jade is immediately struck by the inventory. The weapons on display are of exceptional quality, clearly the work of a master craftsman. He imagines the owner must be a prideful old artisan or perhaps a sharp-eyed matron. However, his expectations are shattered when a massive, muscular man emerges from the back room. The sheer physical pressure and dark aura radiating from the man catch Jade off guard. Unable to reconcile the exquisite work with this brute, Jade awkwardly asks if the real owner is around. Jade awkwardly asks for employment, but his blunt delivery initially confuses the large man. The owner bursts into laughter, amused by Jade's grim demeanor, but ultimately shakes his head. He explains that while Jade seems interesting, the shop is too small to justify hiring an extra hand. Disappointed, Jade turns to leave, but the owner kindly suggests he check back in the future just in case. As Jade reaches the door, a cheerful voice calls out. The young woman from the marketplace incident enters, beaming with energy. She immediately recognizes Jade and expresses relief that he is safe after the earlier chaos. Upon learning that he is looking for work, she enthusiastically intervenes. She turns to the owner, vouching for Jade's character with absolute conviction. She describes how he selflessly chased down a thief for a stranger, painting him as a kind and trustworthy protector who would be a perfect asset to the shop. The owner tries to interject, but a sudden, debilitating spasm in his back drops him to the floor. The girl immediately scolds him, pointing out that his chronic back pain is proof that running the business alone is too much for him. She insists that he needs Jade to ease the burden. Defeated by his own physical limitations and the girl's persistence, the owner relents, flashing a thumbs up to indicate Jade is hired. With the arrangement settled, formal introductions are made. The girl introduces herself as Stana, and the owner reveals his name is Leslie. Jade provides his new alias, and Stana encourages him to do his best before promising to visit again soon. Jade thanks her profoundly, swearing to repay the favor one day. Once she leaves, Leslie tells Jade to drop the stiff attitude. Jade questions the decision, asking if the owner is truly comfortable hiring a shabby stranger based solely on a girl's word. Leslie laughs, admitting that if Stana vouches for him, that is security enough. He warns that the pay will be modest since business isn't exactly booming, but Jade accepts without hesitation, stating that as long as it is enough to survive, he has no complaints. Leslie dismisses him for the day, instructing him to arrive early the next morning to learn the ropes. Walking back to his inn, Jade marvels at the unexpected turn of events. He realizes that he has finally managed to step out of the darkness and onto the starting line. For the first time, the path to an ordinary life lies open before him. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit hall, the thief from the marketplace kneels on the floor, trembling. He desperately apologizes, promising to get it right next time, but the imposing swordsman standing before him is uninterested in excuses. The swordsman coldly demands the status of the azure drop. The thief admits that while he managed to steal the item, the plan fell apart during his escape. He clarifies that he wasn't caught by the city guards due to a lack of speed. Rather, he was ambushed and knocked unconscious by an unknown third party before the soldiers even arrived. Intrigued, the swordsman asks for a description of this interferer, wondering if another assassin is involved. When the thief admits he saw nothing before being dragged away, the swordsman's patience evaporates. Before the subordinate can finish his sentence, the swordsman draws his blade in a blur of motion, slicing the thief's body in two. Sheathing his weapon, the swordsman complains about the incompetence of city recruits and the lack of skilled members in their organization. He expresses frustration at having to clean up such a messy failure and worrying about potential leaks. Stepping out of the room, he orders his bodyguards to dispose of the corpse. As he walks away, his thoughts turn to the mysterious stranger who disrupted his plans. Furious that a simple job has become complicated, he vows to find this interferer and torture him to death. The next morning, Leslie wakes up groaning, his back throbbing from the previous day's exertion. He instantly regrets his decision to hire the stranger, realizing he only agreed to it to look cool in front of Stana. Praying that the new hire isn't a weirdo, he unlocks the shop's front gate, only to nearly jump out of his skin. Jade is already standing there, looming silently in the pre-dawn light. Leslie chastises him for the jump scare and points out that first thing in the morning doesn't mean arriving before the sun is even up. Jade seems genuinely confused by the social nuance, but accepts the critique, reasoning that being early is better than being absent. Shaking off the awkward start, Leslie officially welcomes him to the Black Cat. Jade remarks that the cute name feels out of place for a rugged tool shop, but he takes a seat as instructed for a proper introduction. When asked to introduce himself, Jade hesitates, struggling to filter his bloody past into a socially acceptable backstory. Eventually, he states that he recently moved from the El Grand Empire and has never worked a day in his life. Leslie is thunderstruck, interpreting this to mean Jade is a pampered shut-in who lived off his parents until middle age. Internal panic sets in for the shop owner. He worries he has hired a complete lunatic or a useless loafer, but he fears disappointing Stana, whose judgment he usually trusts. Resolving to fire Jade if he proves incompetent, Leslie continues the introductions. He reveals that before running the shop for the last 10 years, he was a decent adventurer. Jade notes that for a former adventurer, he lacks major scars and has kept himself in good shape. Preening at the compliment, Leslie strikes a muscular pose, only for Jade to dryly warn him that he might throw his back out again. Moving on to training, Leslie walks him through the essentials: stocking shelves, inventory checks, bookkeeping, and deliveries. He explains that while it is mostly grunt work, these tasks are the backbone of the business. Jade nods in understanding but expresses a desire to master the basics first, specifically asking to handle the deliveries. Jade grabs a stack of packages to leave, but Leslie stops him, appalled by his messy appearance. He insists that Jade cannot represent the shop looking so disheveled. The owner forcibly ties Jade's unruly hair into a neat ponytail and suggests he shave the beard next. When Jade points out Leslie's own scruff, the owner dismisses it as a stylistic choice. With his new look, Jade heads out. Leslie watches him go, thinking that despite the oddities, the new hire is straightforward and willing to work. However, his relief vanishes when he spots the delivery map still sitting on the counter. Panic returns, and Leslie rushes into the street to catch him, but the street is already empty. Unaware of the map, Jade traverses the city with supernatural speed, instinctively taking to the rooftops rather than the streets. He realizes that the previous day's thief chase helped him memorize the layout of the main district. Locating the target house with ease, he drops down and rings the bell. A butler answers the door, eyeing the stranger suspiciously. Jade introduces himself as the new delivery man for the Black Cat, holding out the package to confirm the address. Arriving at the first house, Jade is invited inside by the butler. The former assassin hesitates, finding it reckless to invite a total stranger into a home so easily, though he wonders if this level of trust is simply normal in this country. When the butler offers tea and sweets, Jade declines, citing his need to keep working. Visibly disappointed, the butler mentions that Leslie always joins them for tea during deliveries. Feeling a twinge of guilt for rejecting the hospitality, Jade softens his stance and promises to join them for their little indulgence the next time he stops by. Moving with supernatural efficiency, Jade completes the route in record time. He arrives at the final house just 30 minutes after leaving the shop. A young boy rushes out, ecstatic to receive his package, a toy sword. An elderly woman follows, apologizing for the child's excitement. She thanks Jade, noting that Leslie did a wonderful job repairing the toy. The conversation turns somber when she mentions the recent news. While it is a shame the real hero was killed, she believes his legend will live on through books and plays, eventually inspiring a new hero to rise. Hiding the fact that he is the killer, Jade quietly agrees, expressing a hope that the next hero will create a world where no one has to suffer. Walking back to the shop, Jade reflects on how far the rumors of the assassination have spread. He decides to keep his identity buried, knowing he will have to deal with the truth if it ever leaks. When he walks through the shop doors, Leslie is flabbergasted. He points out that a round trip to the closest house usually takes 20 minutes, making it impossible for Jade to have finished all 3 deliveries in 30 minutes without cutting corners or damaging the goods. Jade insists he completed the task properly, but the skeptical owner decides to verify the work personally after closing time. Relegating Jade to indoor tasks for the rest of the day, Leslie waits until evening. Once the shop is locked up, the pair sets out to visit the customers, starting with the butler to confirm whether the new hire is a genius or a liar. After verifying with the customers, Leslie is forced to admit the truth. Jade completed every delivery in record time. He notes that the same route would have taken him an entire day. When Jade dismisses the feat by calling the owner slow, Leslie's expression darkens. He steps closer, applying a surprising amount of pressure. He tells Jade that despite being retired, his adventurer instincts are still sharp. He can tell when someone is hiding their true nature. Jade freezes. He realizes Leslie has sensed his abnormal abilities. His mind races to the worst-case scenario. If his identity as the hero's killer is revealed, he cannot stay in this city. His hand twitches, ready to knock Leslie out, or worse, and flee before the truth spreads. Closing his eyes, Jade vaguely admits that his past is not something he can share with others, preparing himself to strike if Leslie pushes further. Leslie declares that knowing the truth, he cannot simply stay quiet. Jade tenses his muscles, milliseconds away from silencing the shopkeeper. Suddenly, Leslie shouts his deduction with tears in his eyes. Jade must have been forced to work like a dog for his family to develop such stamina. Jade, who was mid-motion to attack, nearly trips over his own feet in sheer relief. He mutters that it was a close call, realizing the owner's imagination is far less dangerous than the reality. Leslie, completely oblivious to the near-death experience, begins weeping openly. He projects his own trauma onto Jade, recounting how he was worked like a mule in his youth and claiming he understands the pain of being exploited. Jade silently accepts the false backstory, thankful that Leslie's conclusion was so far off the mark. Wiping away his tears, Leslie announces that he is starving and offers to treat Jade to dinner. Jade, whose mouth is already watering at the mention of food, eagerly accepts. As the pair heads toward a restaurant, they cross paths with a stranger on the busy street. Jade's senses immediately flare. He notices the man is dressed in sharp, expensive clothing, yet an unmistakable stench of blood clings to him. Jade warily notes that even dangerous predators walk openly in this city, unaware that this man is the swordsman hunting for the stolen azure drop. A week passes since Jade began working at the Black Cat. Although he has his strengths and weaknesses, he settles into a rhythm, excelling particularly at deliveries. One evening, Leslie tells him not to come in the next day. Jade immediately panics, trembling as he asks if he is being fired. Confused by the extreme reaction, Leslie laughs and assures him that his job is safe. He explains that thanks to Jade's hard work, the shop has started offering new services, making him an essential part of the team. Leslie clarifies that tomorrow is simply a day off, a reward for a week of solid training. Jade is bewildered by the concept of a vacation, unsure of what to do with free time that doesn't involve killing or hiding. As he leaves, Leslie hands him a full week's pay, advising him to spend it wisely on shopping or drinking, noting that future payments will be monthly. Peering into the pouch, Jade counts 5 silver and 3 copper coins remaining after his living expenses. He realizes with a sense of irony that this honest wage is higher than what he was paid for assassinating the hero. Excited by his newfound wealth, Jade plans to buy decent clothes and a proper sword. However, his shopping trip is interrupted by the familiar cry of "thief." Seeing a man running with a stolen bag, Jade notes that pickpockets are alarmingly common in this city. He recalls that his last intervention led to being treated like a criminal, but it also introduced him to Stana and landed him his job. Seeing a marketing opportunity, Jade decides to catch this thief as well, planning to use the moment to promote the Black Cat by introducing himself as its trusty employee. Jade takes to the rooftops, navigating the skyline to cut off the criminal's escape route. However, he pauses when he observes the thief running toward a group of men waiting in the street. The behavior strikes Jade as odd. Normally, a thief flees to solitude, but this one seems to be checking in with backup. He watches as the group looks around expectantly, asking if he is coming. Jade realizes the theft was a performance designed to lure someone out. Below, the thugs curse in frustration, complaining that the target didn't take the bait. The boss of the group reprimands them for the obvious decoy plan, but refuses to go home empty-handed, ordering them to change spots and try again. Moving with the silence of a phantom, Jade descends into a dark alley and snatches the trailing pickpocket from the group without the others noticing. Dragging the man into the shadows, Jade listens as the boss rants about finding the bastard who ruined their job in the red light district. The pieces click together for Jade. This isn't random crime. This organized gang is specifically hunting him to settle the score for his first good deed in the city. Jade realizes the thieves' trap has backfired. They were hunting for him, but they still don't know his face. Holding the unconscious pickpocket over his shoulder, he decides to maintain his cover while keeping a close watch on the gang's movements. He approaches a nearby officer to hand over the criminal. The officer immediately recognizes him as the man from the red light district incident and asks if he has caught yet another thief. Jade presents the captive, claiming it was sheer coincidence. Impressed by his track record, the officer suggests that Jade should consider a career in city security or the army, as they are always hiring skilled men. Jade polite declines, insisting that he is content being an ordinary old man working at the Black Cat tool shop. The officer salutes him jokingly, telling him to come back if the shop ever goes under. Resuming his shopping trip, Jade browses the weapon stalls on the main street. He notes that while the bows and arrows are decent, they are vastly overpriced compared to the inventory at the Black Cat. He realizes that Leslie sells better quality goods for cheaper, identifying a clear business opportunity. As he prepares to head back, a familiar voice calls out to him. Stana approaches, surprised and delighted to run into him. Jade updates her on his week, proudly mentioning that Leslie now trusts him with citywide deliveries. Stana is thrilled to hear he is settling in well. When Jade mentions that the main street prices are too rough for his budget, Stana agrees, revealing that the best bargains are actually found in the East District. She enthusiastically invites him to go shopping together. As they walk toward the clothing shops, Jade mentions he is also looking for a weapon. Stana finds this odd for a tool shop employee, but Jade vaguely explains that in a big city full of trouble, self-defense is a priority. She agrees and leads him toward a weapon shop down an alley. Suddenly, she bumps into a man walking in the opposite direction. Time seems to freeze for Jade. He senses an overwhelming, murderous aura radiating from the stranger. For a split second, Jade hallucinates the man drawing a sword and cutting Stana down in a single motion. Reacting to the killing intent, Jade instinctively dashes forward and grabs Stana, pulling her back to safety. Reality snaps back into focus. Stana is unharmed. She had simply stumbled. Flustered, she asks Jade to let go. Jade releases her, apologizing for his sudden movement, his heart racing from the phantom vision. The stranger apologizes smoothly, taking the blame for the collision. Jade stares at him, unnerved. He knows the killing intent was real, even if the attack wasn't. The stranger explains that he is new to the area and was looking for a skilled smith to service a friend's keepsake sword. Stana, ever the helpful soul, offers to guide him to the shop, since they are heading that way. The man smiles and introduces himself as Aven. As they exchange pleasantries, Aven's cold eyes lock directly onto Jade, and a silent, deadly tension passes between the two predators. As the trio walks together, Aven offers a polite apology for the earlier collision, and thanks Stana for guiding him to the smith. Stana brushes off the gratitude, noting that they were heading in the same direction anyway. However, Jade remains on high alert. He recognizes that beneath Aven's friendly facade lies a lethal killing intent. He desperately wishes to eliminate the threat immediately, but with Stana present, he cannot risk a confrontation that might endanger her or reveal his true nature. Sensing Jade's hostility, Aven glances back with a menacing smirk that quickly shifts into a teasing smile. He jokingly tells Jade to relax and stop glaring, assuring him that he has no intention of hitting on his girlfriend. Flustered, Stana quickly denies any romantic relationship, but Aven continues to tease her, calling her reaction mean-spirited. They arrive at the weapon shop, a humble building with a discouraging exterior. Stana promises that despite the looks, the quality within is top-notch. Stepping inside, they are met with a foggy, metallic-smelling environment that causes Aven to cover his nose in distaste. Jade, however, is impressed. He scans the racks, noting a selection of simple yet high-quality designs, including a great sword made of green ore and armor crafted from oni horn. The shop appears empty until Jade spots an old man wearing a wolf skin asleep in the corner. He dryly wonders if the sleeping elder is for sale along with the equipment. Stana sighs and wakes the man, addressing him as Dan. The dwarf smith stirs, apologizing to Master Stana for dozing off. Although he was about to close up, he admits he cannot refuse a request from her. Aven steps forward, presenting his sword for service. He explains that the blade has a unique shape which has caused other smiths to turn him away. Dan examines the weapon, intrigued by its rarity, and asks where he acquired it. Aven claims it was part of a batch of important goods he bought. Sharp-witted Stana immediately points out the inconsistency, reminding him that he earlier claimed it was a friend's keepsake. Aven laughs off the contradiction smoothly, stating that is simply what his friend told him. Accepting the explanation, or perhaps ignoring it, Dan agrees to take the weapon to the forge. Before he disappears into the back, Stana asks if they can browse the inventory while they wait, mentioning that Jade is in the market for a weapon. Dan gives his permission, telling them to call if they need anything. Stana turns to Jade asking about his budget. When he reveals he has a limit of 2 silver coins, Aven interjects, noting that it will be tough to find anything of value here for such a low price. The stranger offers to help pick something out, boasting of his keen eye for weaponry. Jade coldly rejects the offer, stating he prefers to choose his own tools. Ignoring the friction, Stana encourages them to get along and begins browsing the racks herself. Aven comments on the erratic inventory, observing that the shopkeeper is a sly one for mixing masterpieces with utter junk. While Stana admits she cannot tell the difference, Jade ignores the chatter. He focuses his trained eyes on the selection, eventually reaching out and gripping a unassuming short sword. Lifting it from the rack, he announces that he has made his choice. Aven interrupts Jade's selection, scoffing at the short sword in his hand. He disparages the weapon as old and rusted, questioning why Jade wouldn't choose something of higher quality. To emphasize his point, Aven picks up a gleaming blade and rests it dangerously close to Jade's neck, whispering that a weapon like this could easily sever a head. Unflinching, Jade calmly pushes the blade away, reaffirming that his decision is made. Sensing the rising tension but misinterpreting it as competitive spirit, Stana points out the test-cutting dummies in the corner, suggesting they try the weapons out. Aven grins, accepting the challenge. Jade quietly thanks Stana, though she remains unaware that her suggestion likely prevented a bloodbath in the middle of the shop. Aven insists that Jade go first. The former assassin steps up to a dummy and performs a simple, unassuming thrust with his short sword. To the naked eye, it looks like a basic stab that barely damages the target. Jade inspects the blade, feigning surprise that a 2 silver coin weapon holds up so well. Aven mocks the lackluster performance, boasting that his turn will be far more impressive. With a theatrical swing, Aven slashes his sword through the dummy, cleaving it cleanly in 2. Stana gasps in amazement, applauding the display of raw power. At that moment, Dan returns from the forge, announcing that the repairs on Aven's keepsake are complete. He glances at the destroyed dummy, impressed by the clean cut, and notes that it isn't bad for a youngster. Aven, feeling generous, decides to buy the sword he used for the test as well. Dan then turns to Jade, asking if he is certain about the rusty short sword. Jade confirms the purchase, stating he cannot use a weapon he didn't choose himself. Aven chuckles, calling him a serious and boring man. Once the trio exits the shop, Dan sighs, looking at the debris. He acknowledges that slicing a dummy in half is a feat of strength, crediting Aven's skill. However, his eyes wander to the area behind where Jade stood. The shopkeeper freezes. The suit of armor displayed behind the dummy, crafted from deathless ore, the toughest material in the shop, has a clean, precise puncture hole in the center. Dan realizes with horror that Jade's simple thrust didn't just pierce the dummy. It went straight through the target and penetrated the indestructible armor behind it. He frantically checks his inventory and realizes the rusty short sword Jade bought was actually a hidden masterpiece he had buried in the bargain bin. Dan shudders, understanding that the shabby-looking man was the true monster among them, a warrior capable of wielding immense power with terrifying precision. Meanwhile, Aven separates from the group and descends into a hidden underground lair. A subordinate greets him, asking if the repair on his sword was successful. Aven smiles cruelly, asking if the man cares to see it. In a blur of motion, he unsheathes the blade and slices the subordinate's ear off. Ignoring the man's screams, Aven admires the blood on the steel, thanking the gods for a fruitful day. He orders wine and sits in the dark, his mind consumed by Jade. The more the tool shop employee tries to fade into the background, the more Aven feels a compulsive need to hunt him down and break him. The next morning, Leslie greets his employee, asking if he managed to relax on his day off. Jade admits it was a bit hectic, but ultimately enjoyable, crediting Stana for looking after him during the outing. Hearing this, Leslie bursts into comical tears, wailing about the unfairness of it all. Whenever he invites Stana out to eat, she dodges him like a butterfly, yet she seemingly spent the whole day with Jade. Jade dismisses the jealousy, pivoting the conversation to business. He presents a market analysis he conducted during his shopping trip. While the Black Cat is pricier than the open-air market stalls, it is the cheapest option among the brick-and-mortar shops on Main Street. He argues that their selling point is low prices and high satisfaction, but their obscure location is hurting them. Jade proposes placing a signboard outside with clear pricing to attract foot traffic and printing flyers to distribute to potential clients. Leslie's mood instantly lifts at the prospect of improving the shop. He agrees, recalling how the delivery service advertisement successfully boosted their customer base. Jade volunteers to distribute the flyers, already having a specific target in mind. Leslie enthusiastically agrees to design and print them between jobs. The following day, Leslie presents a stack of finished flyers. Though he worries they might be too simple without color, Jade assures him they are perfect and takes a batch to distribute immediately. Impressed by Leslie's speed, Jade decides he needs to hustle just as hard. He heads straight for the Adventurers Guild. Inside the guild, the hall is packed with activity. Jade reasons that while the shop currently serves regular folks, adventurers burn through tools and weapons rapidly, making them the ideal demographic for the Black Cat. He approaches the quest board, noting the variety of jobs from herb picking to monster hunting. As he moves toward the counter, a group of 3 tall, imposing men cuts in front of him. One of them mutters an insult, calling Jade a coward. Jade firmly tells them to stop cutting and get to the back of the line. The leader of the trio sneers, looking down at Jade and comparing his voice to a mouse squeaking. Bystanders whisper warnings, identifying the group as hotshot rookie adventurers and advising Jade not to cross them. Ignoring the intimidation, Jade retorts that their status is none of his business and attempts to step around them. Enraged by the disrespect, the trio blocks his path again, demanding to know why an old man is cutting in line. Jade coolly remarks that if they can see him, they should know how to queue like everyone else. The leader snatches a flyer from Jade's hand, mocking the advertisement as trash before tearing it into pieces. The sight of the torn paper strikes a nerve. Jade experiences a flashback to Leslie's earnest gratitude, recalling how the owner thanked him for making the work exciting and fun again. Seeing his friend's hard work disrespectfully destroyed, Jade's eyes go cold. The leader places a boot on Jade, telling him to get lost. Staring into the bully's eyes, Jade fights the urge to kill them on the spot. Realizing there are too many witnesses for a direct assault, he calculates that he needs a distraction to teach them a lesson without blowing his cover. Inside the guild, Jade decides to act. Reaching into his pocket, he retrieves a small stone and flicks it with precision into a nearby ventilation fan. The sudden, grinding noise startles the crowd, drawing every eye upward. Seizing the split-second distraction, Jade moves in a blur. He lands rapid, punishing punches on the 3 arrogant brothers before they can react. By the time the crowd looks back down, the bullies are groaning on the floor, and Jade has already slipped out the gate, leaving confusion in his wake. Once safe on the street, Jade curses under his breath. In his haste to escape, he failed to distribute the flyers at the guild. He resolves to return the next day to finish the job, but for now he focuses on the remaining flyers in his hand. However, his instincts flare. Jade senses he is being followed by a single person. His mind races through the possibilities. Did someone witness his attack? Is it the authorities? The thieves from the alley? Or worse, is it Aven? Deciding to spring a trap, Jade lures the pursuer into a secluded alleyway. The follower enters the narrow passage, looking around in confusion when the target vanishes. Suddenly, Jade drops from the rooftops, landing behind the stalker and pressing a knife against his throat. He issues a cold command, move or speak without permission, and he dies. The terrified pursuer shakes violently, nodding in compliance. Jade demands the boy's name. The stalker stammers that he is Trevor Bricker. Confused as to why a mere kid is tailing him, Jade demands the reason, keeping a finger on the boy's pulse to detect any lies. Trevor confesses that he saw Jade take down the 3 brothers at the guild. He bursts into tears, sobbing that he was amazed by the display of skill. Unmoved by the waterworks, Jade threatens to break Trevor's arms if he doesn't stop bawling immediately. Terrified, Trevor stifles his cries. With his eyes swollen, he explains that while he couldn't even see Jade move, the result was undeniable. He admits that the 3 brothers bully him constantly, and seeing them humbled made him feel avenged. Jade realizes he worried for nothing. The kid isn't a threat, just a fan. He tells Trevor that no thanks are needed as he was simply settling a personal grudge. Jade attempts to leave, but Trevor suddenly grabs his leg, begging to be made a disciple. Jade refuses flatly, but Trevor clings to him like glue, bargaining for lessons once a week or even once a month. Jade tries to shake him off, shouting that he is too busy with work. During the struggle, the remaining flyers spill from Jade's pocket. Trevor reads the address for the Black Cat and realizes he now knows where Jade works. He threatens to come to the shop and beg every single day until Jade agrees. Cornered by the threat of his workplace being disrupted, Jade reluctantly caves. He agrees to teach Trevor on one strict condition. The boy must never set foot in the Black Cat. Trevor beams, instantly calling him Master, and promising to become strong to escape his status as a low-rank rookie. As Trevor waves goodbye, Jade feels a wave of unease at being called Master, realizing he has taken on a troublesome burden. Jade returns to the shop, where Leslie complains about how long he took. Jade vaguely replies that stuff happened, sparing the owner the details of his new unwanted disciple. When Leslie asks about the flyers, Jade confirms that most were distributed. Leslie celebrates, convinced the shop is about to experience a boom in business. Jade cautions him not to get ahead of himself, though internally he agrees that expanding their reach is necessary for survival. Meanwhile, at a local inn, the three humiliated brothers are taking out their frustration on the other patrons. They pick a fight with a woman seated nearby, shouting insults and threatening violence. As the situation heats up, a frantic employee rushes to the back office, begging the vice guildmaster to intervene. The vice guildmaster steps into the hall, calmly asking for order. The brothers, blinded by rage, scream at him to shut up, dismissing him as an outsider. The man stands his ground, correcting them with an authoritative air. He introduces himself as the vice guildmaster and suggests they sit down for a proper lesson in respect. Jade begins his day with a grueling workout, completing 1,000 single-arm squats with casual ease. Barely breaking a sweat, he decides to head to the Adventurers Guild early, hoping to secure permission to post his flyers before the morning rush begins. Arriving at the guild, Jade approaches the reception desk. The hall is quiet, but his request is immediately rejected. The receptionist explains that they do not allow unauthorized flyers. As Jade attempts to negotiate, the conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a massive figure. Michael O'Brien, the Vice Guild Master, steps forward, apologizing for the delay as he was in the middle of breakfast. Despite the man's imposing size, Jade notices something peculiar. Michael moves in total silence and controls his breathing with the precision of a master combatant. Michael reiterates the rule, explaining that the guild is currently flooded with requests due to the chaos following the hero's death. With monster hunts and garrison defense missions piling up, there is simply no physical space on the board for advertisements. Jade counters by pointing out several trivial tasks on the board, such as pet walking and garden weeding. He proposes a deal. If he completes a request to clear space on the board, he should be allowed to fill that empty slot with a flyer for the Black Cat. Amused by the logic, Michael agrees. Scanning the board for a quick job, Jade pauses at a request to hunt an earth dragon in the North Cave. He immediately dismisses it. A lowly shopkeeper slaying a high-ranking monster would draw far too much attention. Aiming for something more grounded, he selects a request titled Guild Repair. Michael explains that the job involves fixing a section of the ceiling and lights destroyed during a brawl the previous day, where 3 rookies were launched into the air. Jade suppresses a wince, realizing that he was the one who caused that exact damage during his fight with the bullying brothers. Feeling a pang of guilt and perhaps a sense of irony, Jade insists on taking the job and waiving the repair fee in exchange for the flyer permissions. Michael gratefully accepts. Jade begins the work immediately, and halfway through, Leslie arrives to assist. Together, the efficient duo restores the ceiling to brand new condition in record time. With the work done and the flyers posted, the pair walks back to the shop. Jade apologizes for dragging his boss into manual labor, but Leslie is ecstatic. He considers it a massive win to have their advertisement displayed in such a prime location. However, their movements are not going unnoticed. From the shadows of an alleyway, Aven and his subordinates watch Jade closely. One henchman suggests that Jade is just an ordinary old man working hard, noting that after a week of surveillance he has shown no suspicious behavior. Aven, however, remains unconvinced, his instincts screaming that there is more to the tool shop employee than meets the eye. Their bickering is cut short when a high-ranking superior enters the room. The powerful figure chastises them for wasting time on petty arguments. Placing a heavy hand on Aven's shoulder, the superior reminds him of the stakes. With the hero dead, the world is fracturing, creating a power vacuum. He declares that their organization must seize this opportunity to unify the chaos and sit upon God's throne, demanding absolute focus and power from his subordinates. Inside the hideout, the superior asserts his dominance with brutal disrespect, shoving his foot directly onto Aven's face. He warns his subordinate not to get distracted by bubbles on the road, trivial matters that might derail their grand plan, before turning to leave. Once the heavy door clicks shut, Aven explodes in a rage, cursing the dead brat and his arrogance. A subordinate hesitantly asks for their next move, assuming they should drop the investigation. However, Aven snaps back, insisting they keep digging into Jade. When the henchman protests, citing the superior's orders, Aven cuts him off. He explains that his observations from the sidelines have confirmed a dangerous truth. Jade is not a mere pebble to be kicked aside, but a buried landmine. If left alone, the shopkeeper has the potential to blow their entire organization sky high. Meanwhile, at a squalid gathering spot used by Aven's lower-ranking men, the atmosphere is thick with desperation. One of the men slams his head repeatedly against the wall, driven to madness by boredom and withdrawal. His partner tells him to quit it, but the addict complains that babysitting a useless old shopkeeper is excruciating dull work. Surrounded by syringes and evidence of substance abuse, the group comes to a reckless conclusion. If nothing interesting is happening with the target, they should make something happen to relieve their frustration. The two addicts head to the Black Cat, planning to cause a scene. They sneer at the shop's exterior, calling it a dump, but are taken aback when they step inside. Thanks to the flyers, the shop is packed with customers. Leslie, overwhelmed by the rush, barely glances at them, shouting a generic welcome and telling them to pick whatever they like. Frustrated at being ignored, the thugs try to initiate a confrontation. One grabs a weapon from the rack and loudly calls it junk, hoping to provoke a reaction. However, their attempt at intimidation is completely steamrolled when a female customer cuts in front of them to complain about a defective anti-monster charm. Prioritizing the paying customer, Leslie apologizes to her and immediately directs Jade to handle the exchange, leaving the two thugs standing awkwardly in the background. Leslie mutters an apology for the chaos, admitting that while the business boom is great, the service is getting sloppy due to the lack of staff. As if on cue, Stana arrives, chiming in that hiring more help is a great idea. She explains that she came to check on Leslie's bad back, worried that the increased workload might be aggravating his injury. The two thugs watch from the corner, hesitant to interrupt the flowing conversation. One admits he is bad at cutting into groups, while the other mocks him for chickening out. Unaware of the danger, Stana offers Leslie a solution for his pain, pulling out a vial of strong painkillers. The sight of the medicine bottle triggers the addict's cravings instantly. Losing all self-control, he lunges at Stana, screaming for her to give him the drugs. Before he can reach her, Jade intercepts the attack. Moving with terrifying speed, he grabs the addict's arm and drags him back, putting himself between the threat and his friends. The addict struggles, eyes wild, demanding the HS pills. His partner watches the scene unfold with a twisted grin, thinking that while this wasn't the original plan, the resulting chaos works perfectly for them. Inside the shop, the situation escalates instantly. The addict, mistaking Stana's painkiller for a narcotic known as HS, lunges at her with manic desperation. Jade immediately steps in, pulling Stana back and warning her to stay behind him. However, before Jade needs to reveal his combat skills, Leslie intervenes. The burly shop owner punches the attacker mid-leap and traps him in a bone-crushing bear hug. With a heave of effortless strength, Leslie throws both troublemakers out the front door, dusting off his hands and declaring that the troublesome customers have been evicted. Turning back to his friends, Leslie strikes a heroic pose, asking if Stana is unharmed. Jade silently questions the necessity of the pose, but remains alert. Stana drops to her knees, apologizing profusely for carelessly taking out the vial. She explains that she has heard rumors of a dangerous drug called HS spreading among local punks, which is highly addictive and lethal. Jade realizes that Stana is not to blame. He deduces that these men were watchers sent by Aven to test him. Since Jade evaded their surveillance at the smithy, Aven is pushing harder to gauge his threat level. Leslie, noticing Jade's dark expression, asks what is wrong. When Jade blames himself for the flyer idea attracting bad elements, Leslie calls him an idiot. He cheerfully insists that weirdos are just a side effect of a booming business and tells Jade to get back to work. Jade admires the owner's optimism but resolves to protect the Black Cat from whatever Aven sends next. Meanwhile, the two watchers return to Aven's hideout. The villain is furious at their incompetence, nearly striking them down with his sword before stopping himself. He realizes that their reckless attack actually provided valuable intel. Jade's reaction speed confirms he is a threat to the organization. Aven decides that they cannot risk a direct duel. Instead, they will remove the obstacle using a trap. Turning to the addict who caused the scene, Aven offers him a reward for his efforts. The addict, complaining that his high has worn off, eagerly accepts the injection. Aven administers a lethal dose of HS, a drug that floods the body with euphoria before destroying it. Moments later, the addict collapses, screaming as his blood boils and his internal organs rupture from the pressure. Watching the gruesome death with cold indifference, Aven orders his remaining subordinate to prepare for a cleanup operation. The next day, the team finishes work at the shop. Leslie apologizes to Stana for roping her into helping, but she smiles, happy to assist. A loud growl from Jade's stomach interrupts the moment. Leslie laughs and suggests they all grab dinner together. Jade listens to them discuss cuisine, mentally adding, "Eat something delicious" to Hachi's bucket list. Suddenly, Jade's heightened senses pick up a faint, muffled scream from the distance. He freezes, realizing he is the only one who heard it. Torn between his hunger and his instincts, he hesitates. Leslie, misinterpreting Jade's hesitation as a clumsy attempt to give him and Stana some privacy, slaps him on the shoulder. The owner tells him not to worry and that they have got this, essentially giving Jade permission to leave. Jade plays along, grateful for the misunderstanding, and slips away into the shadows. Following the scent of blood, Jade tracks the source to a locked building that resembles a tavern. Picking the lock, he enters to find a mix of alcohol fumes and the metallic sting of death. He navigates to the bathroom, finding a hidden mechanism behind a loose brick. A secret door slides open, revealing a staircase leading down to a basement. At the bottom, Jade finds a room where the second watcher, the partner of the dead addict, is tied up and badly bruised, gagged with a cloth. Jade approaches, removing the gag and demanding information. He begins to cut the ropes binding the man, but the prisoner screams in terror. He warns Jade too late that the ropes are rigged to a trigger. As the final strand snaps, the trap activates. The severed rope releases a mechanism connected to the corpse of the overdosed addict, which has been stuffed with explosives. The body drops from the ceiling, detonating on impact. A massive fireball consumes the basement. Nearby at a restaurant, Aven feels the ground shake and smiles, satisfied that the disposal is complete. He compares Jade to a fishbone stuck in his teeth, an irritation that has finally been removed. He walks to the smoking ruins of the tavern to confirm the kill. Staring into the fog and debris, Aven mocks the memory of the shopkeeper, lamenting that they might have been friends in another life. Suddenly, a cold blade presses against Aven's neck. Jade emerges from the smoke behind him, his clothes singed but his body very much alive. Aven freezes, shock replacing his arrogance as he realizes the fishbone is still there. As Aven faces off against the shopkeeper, his mind flashes back to the origins of this mission. He recalls his superior's ruthless ambition to climb to the top of the world, even if it means wading through a sea of blood. In the memory, the organization hunts down the Black family head, who attempts to flee the city after his operation is compromised. However, Aven ambushes him in the dead of night. Before the target can react, Aven disables him, slicing his hand and stabbing his leg to ensure compliance. Aven demands information on HS, a revolutionary drug capable of changing the world. The Black family head refuses, vowing to die rather than hand it over. Unfazed, Aven produces a teddy bear belonging to the man's granddaughter, using it as leverage. Broken by the threat to his family, the target surrenders the information. Later, inside the Black family mansion, Aven's subordinates report failure, believing the intel is lost. Aven and his superior arrive to correct them. The superior tosses the severed head of the Black family head onto the floor, shocking the room. Tapping his temple, the superior reveals that the formula for HS is safely memorized in his own mind. He then assigns Aven to take over the city's underground, expecting results. Back in the present, the smoke from the explosion clears. Aven attempts an aerial ambush, but Jade counters instantly. Aven lands, expressing genuine surprise that the blast didn't kill the shopkeeper. He admits to a singular regret. He wanted to chat before the kill. Aven reveals that the man Jade caught in the red light district, the very first thief, was carrying the Azure Drop, a gem essential for amplifying the HS drug. Realizing Jade's immense skill, Aven questions why a man of his caliber is playing shop clerk on the surface. He offers Jade a place in the organization, insisting the underground is where he truly belongs. Jade refuses without hesitation. Sighing, Aven shifts tactics. He threatens to kill Jade and then slaughter everyone he cares about, specifically implying Stana and Leslie. This threat shatters Jade's patience. Moving faster than Aven can track, Jade strikes, sending the villain crashing into the wall. Jade declares that he is just an ordinary clerk at a small tool shop who loves his current life, and he will crush anyone who tries to ruin it. Terrified and unable to move, Aven realizes he is about to die. In a panic, he reaches into his coat and pulls out a syringe of HS. Cursing his own weakness, he injects the volatile drug directly into his neck. A surge of false power floods his veins, erasing the pain and replacing fear with euphoria. Believing himself invincible, Aven charges, thrusting his blade into Jade's stomach. He laughs maniacally, convinced he has won. However, Jade's voice cuts through the delusion, asking if the drugs are messing with his vision. Aven looks down and realizes he hit nothing but air. In reality, Jade has already severed his hand. The drug's high vanishes, replaced by the cold dread of death. Aven falls to his knees, begging for mercy. He offers money, influence, and a promise to never touch the shop again. Jade listens impassively, noting that his old self might have considered the deal, but the man living as Jade cannot take that risk. With a swift, precise motion, Jade slits Aven's throat, ending the threat permanently. Examining the corpse, Jade wonders about the terrifying nature of the drug that drove a skilled fighter to madness. Turning the body over, he spots a tattoo on Aven's neck. Not an insect, but a stylized serpent. Before he can investigate further, a desperate cry rings out from nearby. Jade turns to hear a man begging for his life, realizing there is a witness to the slaughter.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away.